Hey there, friends. Come on in the room. We got a little bit of information to talk about today. If you want to call it breaking news, we'll call it breaking news, but it's interesting news nevertheless. Waiting for those of you guys to come rolling in the room, and then we're going to go ahead and try to get started here. I'm going to take as many of your questions and comments as I possibly can as time allows. We do have another live stream that we're going to go to shortly after this one, and it will actually be John Crump and Flying Rich's live stream that I'll jump on as soon as we're done here. Actually, theirs will be at 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. So I will be over there here in a little bit. Again, enjoy the comforting music as you come rolling into the room, because this is a safe place for all Second Amendment Constitution-loving people. Again, I'm going to let the room get a little bit populated, and we'll let the groovy music play for a little bit. I assume it's still playing. I don't have my headphones on. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff right there. That's good stuff. A lot of you guys recognize names in the room. Some I don't recognize. Toby Hatch, I don't recognize the name, but I'm glad to see you here. I'm sure you've been on before. Deep South EDC, Jack Decoyle, Toby, just said that. Unforgettable, Tisha Russo, of course, Minnie Trout. Thank you for joining again, Minnie. I appreciate the awesome job of moderating the room. And actually, I had a really kind compliment on one of my YouTube videos. I think it was last week or maybe over the weekend, that complimented the moderators that we had here on the Legally Armed America channel. So thank you, Minnie. Obviously, you were one of them that they were speaking of, and probably the main one they were speaking of. Jericho Fox, good to see you again. Thomas Reed, Uncle Mike, good to see you. Johnny Three Bar, Flying Rich, what's up, Flying Rich? Flying Rich is who I'll be joining here after this. Uncle Mike, Randall Reese, Armed Citizen 556, Michael Cook. And the list goes on. You guys are coming into the room pretty good. So let me go ahead and kill the music, and we will get things going here. All right. A couple things. I'm going to go ahead and change this also. If you guys ever want to email something to me, just send it to paul@legallyarmedamerica.com. Again, paul@legallyarmedamerica.com. Best place to reach me, probably the most consistent place to reach me, and you're usually going to get a response from me. If I don't respond to you, please do not give up. Send me another message to make sure that I got what you sent, because I do get an abundance of emails, and sometimes they'll get lost depending on what time of day that I'm looking at them. So if you don't get a response from me, please respond again. Okay, let me get into this topic first, because this is a pretty interesting topic. I don't do a lot of early afternoon live streams, but I felt like this one was pretty relevant. I am waiting on a potential guest to join me also. From Gun Owners of America, Josh Barnhill. He and I both worked together here in the state of Louisiana with these guys. And Josh was actually down in or testified on in committee today, and has some kind of firsthand information that he shared with me earlier, and I wanted him to share with you guys as well. Actually, some good news. Now, you'll remember, let me set this up, if you don't mind, to kind of make sure we all understand where we're at. Because if you follow my channel, you probably saw my video this last week, where it talked about and boy, I'm so hesitant to call it constitutional carry, because really it's a quasi permitless carry. It's not true constitutional carry, and we can get into that later. But nevertheless, they're calling it constitutional carry, and it was Mr. McCormick's House Bill 131, and essentially it was kind of like a mirroring of our open carry here in Louisiana, with no restriction on age. Of course, 18 and up, but no restriction for adult age people. And you simply could only carry in the same places you were already allowed to carry as open carry, which was not a bad bill. It was getting there pretty close. Anyway, it passed the House last week. We talked about the politics at play here in the state of Louisiana, and how with the the deadline that we had, in a very small time frame that we had, this was very unlikely to pass the Senate because it didn't have time. And of course, if it made it to the Senate and they voted on it, the governor could kind of wait it out and let the clock run out on it and then veto it. We do have veto-proof majorities in both the House and the Senate here in Louisiana right now. There lies the problem. It's only veto-proof based on political party, and you know what I'm talking about there. Your Second Amendment bill is only as good as the politician who's voting for or against it, right? So we can cheerlead and high five each other all we want, saying that we have a veto proof majority because the Republicans hold that particular majority in both the House and the Senate. But it means nothing if they're not going to support the bills that we want them to support, which is the case here. If you don't remember, we had a really good opportunity 2 years ago, and constitutional carry passed the House and the Senate, made it to the governor's desk. The governor vetoed it. They would not have had a veto override session, but we had one of those trans bills that were going to allow men to beat up on women in high school sports here in the state of Louisiana. And only because the Republicans had the stomach for that bill, because it was going to make it, I mean, it again got vetoed by the governor. And the Republicans were like, no, 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 no. We don't want this in our state. We do not want boys competing and beating all of our girls in high school sports in the state of Louisiana. That's why concealed carry made it through with the veto override session 2 years ago. It wasn't because our Republicans wanted this. They wanted the trans bill, or the bill that would do away with the trans people beating up on women in sports. So we kind of slid in on their coattails with the constitutional carry. It wasn't intended to bring constitutional carry in. That just happened to come in with the trans bill. Well, guess what? We had the opportunity at that point. Remember, all these people had already voted in favor of constitutional carry at that point. Oh, well, guess what? This sounds like Nancy Pelosi. Now they had a chance to read the bill. Some of them changed their votes, because they never intended for this to pass to begin with. They knew the governor had been bragging about vetoing constitutional carry, so they knew all along that there was no chance of this bill actually making it, or at least they thought, no chance of it making it to the governor's desk. So they could go ahead and falsely vote for a bill that they really didn't support, but they voted for it, thinking it would never pass anyway. Well, guess what? It ends up passing, making it to the governor's desk. And then they're thinking, okay, well, if he vetoes it, I'm still safe, because we haven't had a veto override session since 1974 in the state of Louisiana. Well, guess what? Then we get the veto override session. So now it's like the dog chasing the car. What do they do whenever they catch it? Well, we found out what they were going to do when they caught it. They voted against it. So some of the same people who voted in favor of constitutional carry in the same session a month later voted against it and shot it down. So that's where we really didn't expect much to happen this time around, simply because this is the final year of our governor who is termed out. This is a Democrat governor. It's kind of a fluke that we got this guy. It's a long story, but the Republicans ran an unwinnable candidate who was caught up in a hooker scandal with the Madam of DC and all that kind of stuff. That's who they chose to run against this guy that's in there now. So a lot of Republicans sat it out. So that's how we wound up with this guy. We shouldn't have a Democrat governor down here in a red state like this, but it happened. And this is the consequences of it. So what we end up with is, now you've got, thank you, Toby. I appreciate you, brother. Now we have this person who is shown, our governor, shown to be anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment. Excuse me. So we're sitting over here talking last week, and I told you what my thoughts were, that we had no chance of this actually making it to the Senate. I felt like somebody was going to throw some kind of an amendment in there to extend the deadline, allowing us not to do anything with it. Well, today it passes out of committee. And let me go ahead and pull my story up. As you can see, I've got it out here already. Let me get it a little bit larger where you guys can see it. Okay, Louisiana moves closer to allow adults to carry hidden handguns without permits training. Okay, this is today. This got published an hour or so ago. Let me read a little bit of it to you and let you have to understand this is Louisiana politics too. So bear with me on the cloudiness of some of this stuff, because our politics has never been mainstream. Louisiana lawmakers took another step Tuesday, which is today, toward allowing adults to carry hidden handguns without permits or training. Members of the Senate Judiciary B Committee voted 4-1 to advance Republican Oil City State Representative Danny McCormick's House Bill 131, though they did amend the measure to raise the age from 18 to 21. The bill did not, guys, include that age limit. It allowed all adults, adult-aged Louisianans, to carry a firearm concealed or open carry, of course. We already have open carry, but it's going to allow them permitless carry of a concealed weapon. This amendment was put out there to raise the age from the age of 18 to 21, and it did pass. They did amend it. Committee Chairman Gary Smith, a Democrat from Norco, began the bill's hearing by saying, "Let's get the wild, wild west going." Smith voted in favor of the legislation. Well, Smith seems like a real idiot, because why would you vote for a bill and then use the left's talking points, even though he is the left, as a Democrat, to say this is going to be the wild, wild west? This guy's just showing that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Constitutional carry will restore Second Amendment rights in Louisiana. This is the House sponsor of the House. It's Danny McCormick's bill said. Though Smith noted the Second Amendment never mentions the right to carry a concealed gun. Well, Smith seems like an idiot, because Smith does not realize that it also doesn't state in the Second Amendment that you have to open carry a firearm. It does not say shall not be infringed unless you're concealed carrying. So this man clearly is not much of a constitutional scholar, and we shouldn't put much credence into what he says regarding the Constitution, because clearly this is pretty foreign to him, and this is a man that is going to repeat talking points of the left, although he did vote for this. But again, he can't seem to vote for it in full support. He's got to mention some of the stupidity of the far left as he exits the room. Supporters of McCormick's legislation referred to it as constitutional carry because they believe the Second Amendment already grants that right. Puts law-abiding citizens on equal footing with criminals, said Kelly Senor of the National Rifle Association. It removes the burden to exercise a constitutional right. But opponents, like those testifying from Moms Demand Action and the Louisiana Chiefs of Police, said concealed carry without the training and permits required now makes the streets more dangerous for citizens and police, which is not true. That's a stupid comment to make. And to further exemplify my point that law enforcement has less training with firearms than what the average American like we do, I can back that up with this clown. Fabian, I guess that's Blache or Bloch, with the Louisiana Chiefs of Police, called the bill ill-conceived and said it would pose a danger for the community and police officers, which it won't. And you won't see any rise in statistics. You will actually see a reduction in crime as a result of this. But this guy's an idiot, and he's appointed by an idiot, no doubt. I don't even have to look. These police chiefs are all appointed by mayors. And as you know, most mayors, especially in larger cities, are left-leaning wacko Democrats. So this guy's more than likely following suit with all of that. A lot of these guys in small-town police chiefs also, because they're kind of stupid and they're hicks, they'll usually not have any original thought. So whatever other police chiefs say, they parrot the same thing. Because again, they're kind of hillbillies. Again, I'm a hillbilly, so I can say that. But these guys are, again, they're backwoods hillbilly-ish kind of people. They're not very bright. So in a lot of cases, they're going to say things that aren't very bright because they've heard other people who they assume are smarter than them say these things. So they simply repeat the exact same things. The article goes on to say 27 states already permit a form of concealed carry, including all of Louisiana's neighbors, which is right. If you look at the map, it's absolutely disgusting and embarrassing that if you see the South, you see every state around us, and there's this hole in the middle that is Louisiana, that we do not have constitutional carry. So what a shame. Let's see. This is the fourth time McCormick has carried this measure, which cleared the House easily last year before it stalled in the Senate. This was after the Uvalde shootings, which is kind of stupid because that's what the Democrats and the wackos and the far left always try to push. They take advantage of any kind of a shooting to shoot down other bills that actually would make the community safer. But because they involve firearms, they're automatically, I guess, pushed aside because no one has the stomach to talk about them, because the left has really dominated that conversation for so long. McCormick said the bill is particularly important to him because he wants his 4 granddaughters, ages 10, 2, and twin 6-year-olds, to be able to protect themselves as adults. McCormick posted a video of himself and one of his 6-year-old granddaughters. That's the photo you see to the right. on his Facebook page featuring the AR-15 she used to kill her first deer in November. She used an AR-15, which my anti-gun people like to call assault weapon. But as you can see, she used it to hunt with. McCormick said in the video, we're so proud of her. Very cool. Lawmakers passed a concealed carry bill in 2021 that was nearly identical to McCormick's legislation, but Democrat Governor John Bel Edwards vetoed the measure. And it doesn't go on to talk about what we just talked about, but it didn't meet a veto override session and did not pass through that. Edwards generally has been a reliable vote for gun rights expansion bills, but he said he believes the current law requiring in-person training and a permit strikes the right balance. Okay. This last paragraph is not worded very good. It says Edwards generally has been a reliable vote for gun rights expansion bills. He has not. If they're saying pro-gun bills, he has not been. He just hasn't been as anti-gun as some people. But to label him pro-gun or pro-gun rights, just because he hasn't been as rabidly anti-gun as some of the other nutbags out there, is really a horrible thing. It's not either or. You can be anti-gun and not be as wacko anti-gun leaning as some of the other people out there. It says, but he said he believes the current law requiring in-person training and a permit strikes the right balance. Well, this law, apparently they're pulling this from, this is the Shreveport Times that put this out there. Apparently the Shreveport Times is misunderstanding this bill. This is wrong right here. Let me see. Let me highlight that. I don't know if you guys can see that okay. Let me make sure. Yeah, you can see it. The current bill does have a piece of legislation put forth by Blake Miguez, who is another rep, where it allows for training. In other words, it doesn't mandate training. Unless I'm reading the bill wrong, it does not mandate training. It allows for training, free training, that people can still undertake. That is the current training involving concealed carry. So you can still take part in training if you want to, but it isn't mandated. Looks like Shreveport Times is maybe referring to an old story where it did have that requirement in there, but to my knowledge, this one does not have in-person training involved in that. So anyway, guys, that's the kind of big news. And why is it big news? And this is why I wish my friend Josh could make it on here. Yeah, here we go. Let's see if Josh can. He just texted me back. Let me see what he says. No link. Did I not send him the link? Must not have. Let me grab the link and send it back to him. Copy. And we'll bring Josh in here. All right. Apparently, I did not send him the link earlier. I have sent it now. So let's see. All right. So I'll wait to see when Josh is able to climb back in here or able to climb in here. And we will go to town with a little bit more of a discussion on that, because I want to explain a little bit more. There's some politics at play here and some interesting politics at play. It's the kind of politics that Louisiana is well known for. And it's going to, if you look at this scenario on the surface, you would think, well, this bill still doesn't have a chance. And you would think that based on previous events, that nothing is going to change because all the same stuff is going to happen again. Well, there are some things that have taken place that are maybe telling us a little bit different story than what we would normally assume based on who's doing it. In other words, there's always people in various political positions, especially at that smaller level, including the state level, where you're going to find that somebody else might do the governor's bidding. In other words, maybe the governor doesn't want to go on record. We can use Florida as an example, just the way I look at things, that DeSantis, excuse me, didn't really want permitless carry to make it to his desk. Because had he wanted it to get to his desk for last couple of years, he could have told the state reps and the Senate, get this bill to my desk because I want to sign it. He said that in the media But he apparently did not tell them that, because if he truly wanted it to make it to his desk, it would have gotten there. It would have absolutely gotten there. All he had to do was go behind closed doors and tell them, I want this to make it to my desk. He didn't push for that until here recently. He pushed for that, thinking that this is going to give him a boost going into the presidential election. We have similar situations like that here in Louisiana, where we have some people who will kill bills before it ever makes it to the governor's desk. And I'm not going to call these people the governor's bitch, but they kind of are. In other words, they'll do the governor's bidding so the governor doesn't have to do that publicly. So they'll kill something before the governor ever has that opportunity even to vote for or against something. So they're clean on it. They have cover. They don't have to worry about what do the people think. Oh, well, I never had a chance to vote on that and never made it to my desk. There's been some odd politics at play today that took place. And what I mean by that is one of the governor's henchmen that does that kind of stuff, that will terminate a bill so that it never has to make it to the governor's desk, actually is the one who suggested this amendment to raise the age from 18 to 21 and then voted for the bill. Look, we've got Josh in here now. Let me grab my headset here. And I'll bring Josh in here. Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Doing well. How you doing, Paul?
Doing good, doing good. Okay, guys, I've got Josh Barnhill here. Josh is an attorney in the state of Louisiana. He also does a lot of work with Gun Owners of America. And Josh was actually at the committee hearing today. And Josh, I was just going over, I explained pretty much what happened with the bill today, how the vote took place. And I've read this article from the Shreveport Times that kind of summarizes the bill. But I was just going into the discussion and the explanation about why this may have a chance. And I was describing, I didn't mention by name Mr. Tarver, but let's talk about who Senator Tarver is and how he has been known to be the bill killer for the governor for a while. And that by him suggesting the amendment and then voting for this amended bill, now it may send a message that this bill does have a chance. So if you could pick it up from there and explain a little bit of that.
Yeah, well, I don't know much about Senator Tarver. I know he's a senator up in the Shreveport area. Actually, I think he is Representative McCormick's senator. And so this was just relayed to me that he is known as somebody who blocks bills for the governor. And so if this is the case, he obviously didn't block the bill. He put forth the amendment that would raise it to 21 and then voted in favor. So it passed 4-1 out of the committee. So that's kind of right now all we have to go on with. But if the rumor is true that if the governor usually gives the word to Senator Tarver, if there's a bill he doesn't want to reach his desk, I mean, it's sort of the opposite of what happened. He amended the bill to 21 and then voted it out to where presumably it makes it to the governor's desk. Now, something I was looking at before I got on, so a little clarification now, what's going to happen to the bill. So under the Senate rules now, the bill, because there's what's called a fiscal note attached to it. So the bill, essentially, it's I don't know which department, but essentially the fiscal department, I guess, they'll run to see how is this going to affect the state's budget. And under the fiscal note, it has, they think, or could propose to raise or lower fees that the state could collect over $500,000 over the next 3 years. So obviously there's a thought that if there's permitless carry, there may be less fees that the state police would collect. Because of this, the Senate rules say that once it leaves committee, which it did today, it was voted out favorably, that now the Senate president has to assign it to the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Committee, which that's what happened last year. That's how the bill died. It went to Revenue and Fiscal Affairs, and somebody put an amendment in it that essentially gutted all the concealed carry language and put in, it was some kind of a school. It was right after the Uvalde shooting, so they put in some kind of language specifically for school safety. Whether that was done on purpose to get rid of constitutional carry, or like the the amendment author said it was his last ditch effort for school safety. I don't know, but it hasn't been a great place for bills to go. The Revenue and Finance Fiscal Affairs, Committee, and so, but Senate rules can be suspended, and they're suspended all the time. And I was actually just texting with Representative McCormick that hopefully whoever's carrying the bill through the Senate will request that the rules are suspended. It takes a majority vote of the senators to suspend the rules, and if that rule is suspended, it should go directly to to the Senate for a full vote.
So let me ask you this, because I read this article earlier. I'm gonna I don't know if you can see this on screen. Of course, I can't even scroll it right now. But look what I've got highlighted at the bottom of this page. Let me wait for it to scroll. Okay. This would appear, of course, it goes to the next story. Oh, look. I thought this was funny. Former First Lady Rosalind Carter diagnosed with dementia. I wonder if the doctor told her, ma'am, if you don't do something about it, you're going to be just like Joe Biden any day now. Just curious how bad her at first is as bad as Biden. So let's see here. Okay. Is this the Shreveport Times pulling this information from an old version of this bill? You see where they're talking about Edwards. They say Edwards generally has been a reliable vote for gun rights expansion bills, but he said he believes the current law requiring in-person training and a permit strikes the right balance. They must be talking about an old version, because as you and I discussed earlier, there's not a requirement, right, in the current bill, just the availability of the training out there, right?
Well, he had mentioned, so 2 years ago when we had the veto session, it was Senator Jay Morris who brought essentially a similar bill as this. And I think that was talking about just generally making statements that he wasn't against concealed carry of handguns. It was just his issue was the training. And so that's why he was opposed to it. The only bill that had a training component was that same, I think it was 21, that same year, Representative Fontenot originally brought a bill that had training. It was essentially the same permitless carry, except you had to get training. But he amended that bill and took it out. So there was no bill that made it to the governor or had a possibility of making it to the governor that actually included training. Now that's Representative Miguez. I don't know if it passed that year or the next year. Passed essentially. There's free online training on the state police website. I think right now it's 2 hours. There's a bill going through right now that would add another 15 minutes. Actually, it's attached to HB 131 that adds additional stuff on suicide prevention, and I think something for veterans, maybe tied in with the suicide prevention. But I seem to recall that those comments were in regards to when the governor was essentially saying back then, if constitutional carry made it to his desk, he would veto it, and the reason is just for training. He's like he says, he's very pro Second Amendment. He loves hunting, and so it was not that he's against the Second Amendment, but he believes you need training. But he's been quiet this year. He hasn't said anything about it.
Well, that's what I was about to bring that up. I mean, if we haven't heard much from the governor, you and I talked offline a while ago. What would be, and we're just going to say that we're guessing right here. I don't mind speculating. What would be the thing that the governor would gain, and what would be his motive for suddenly supporting something that he's always been against from a future standpoint? I mentioned earlier to the viewing audience that he's on his way out. He's been termed out, but in the state of Louisiana, he can run again later for the governorship. And we talked about the federal seat of Cassidy too later on. Do you think he's looking at some political gain down the road for potentially saying, hey, look what I did for the state of Louisiana, even though he bucked it for so many years?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he ran as a moderate Democrat both times. He ran pro Second Amendment. Now, I don't know if you remember the ads, but it was essentially him wearing hunter's orange with a shotgun. He didn't have much to say about it other than he was pro Second Amendment. But the emphasis being that, he's a hunter. So that's why.
Right.
And so, no, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if you think about it, obviously we don't know for sure, but most likely as of right now, it's looking like a Republican will likely win the governorship. Jeff Landry, perhaps he's the front runner right now as things stand. But so if he does, this is going to pass next year.
Yeah.
And so if it's going to pass, or maybe hopefully something better passes, something stronger. But if you're sitting, I mean, to me, if I'm Governor Edwards, and so I ran and was elected as a quote moderate pro Second Amendment Democrat, if I want to run for governor again, or even any statewide office in Louisiana, I mean, you're going to have to show, his base, a lot of his base are quote moderate Republicans, and this would feed right into that. If he signed this, he could say, I'm the most pro Second Amendment governor in the history of Louisiana because I signed into law constitutional carry.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I mean, again, I'm no political expert, but to me, I see little downside for him. It's going to likely pass next year. It takes, something, away from potentially Governor Landry, who, they clash all the time. So, to me, that adds a little cherry on top if you can take that away from Landry and get it yourself. And, for 4 years, or, 4 years for Cassidy, if he decides to run for governor again, not senator, in the next 4 to 8 years, I mean, you got that in your back pocket to say, look, I told you I was a pro 2A Democrat, and look, I'm the one that signed constitutional carry into law.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I originally thought that just by the way Edwards was carrying himself, that at some point he wanted to work for the Biden administration or somebody else in the Biden administration. Well, clearly, if he allows this to happen, that's not going to be his goal. He's probably looking at something more stateside here, or here in the state of Louisiana, rather than anything at a federal level, because he's not going to be in good graces with any of those left-leaning wackos if he, allows this to go, be put into law.
And he doesn't have to sign it either. He can. So in Louisiana, if the governor doesn't veto something, it goes into law automatically.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a pocket veto, but he can not sign it into law. Again, I don't see the difference, but I guess you could say, he could say his supporters, look, I didn't sign into law. It was this, or, next year, who knows what worse it could have been. So this kind of took, this was the better thing. It went to law. I wasn't for it, but, at least we, headed off potentially something worse under the next administration.
I think
that's one of the. I'm sorry, Paul. I mean, cut you off, but that's one of the things we talked about. One of my concerns is, something passes now. So I don't know if you'd said, but when it was amended in the committee, I, on behalf of Gunners America, voted against the bill as amended to move it from 18 to 21. One of the concerns being that it goes through, passes, and then everybody's excited, we got constitutional carry, and then the election happens. And then next year, nobody's concerned about constitutional carry anymore. Now it's hard, because people say, well, once you get it passed, you can make it better.
Yeah.
In theory, but once it's passed and all the fanfare is gone and everybody says, okay, Louisiana, the 28th state, now we're moving on to who's the 29th state. Is it going to be easy to move it down to 18? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I don't, it would be great if it passed. It's just one of my concerns is, if it passes at 21, are we kind of stuck there for a while, or at least until the courts say you can't do that, it has to be 18. My concern is that the legislature won't have the stomach at that point to lower it to 18. I mean, because the only reason we got so many Republicans to vote for it, that we've had, it was something like, I don't have it in front of me, something like somewhere between 12 or 17, I can't remember the exact number, Republicans that voted on the House floor for this bill, which is 18 and over. 12 to 17 of those essentially switched their vote from last year. Like last year, the bill was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And on the House floor, there was an amendment to take it from 21 back to 18. And there was like 37 Republicans that voted against that bill, that amendment. Well, somewhere between 12 to 17 who were saying, no, we think it should be 21, voted for the 18 this year.
Okay.
And so was that only because it's an election year, or did they change their minds? Or was it because there was an amendment brought? an amendment on the House floor to amend it to 21. Representative Villio brought that amendment, and there was a handful of a dozen or more Republicans who said, nope, we don't want 21. We think it's 18. But they didn't think that last year. I'm hoping they changed their mind for for the Second Amendment's sake and the sake of our rights, and not for the sake of their reelection campaign. But
Right.
I don't know. So that's what makes me concerned is you get 21 now, election's over, I'm reelected. Well, they find there's all kind of ways to make sure bills don't go forward, and then next thing we know, we never get the bill amended from 21 back to 18.
Well, that's what worries me, and that's why I'm glad you handled it the way you did. I thought that was awesome. The fact that I think it's important that the message be sent out there that definitely GOA does not support there being that cap on the age all the way up to 21, and that any adult age person ought to be able to have the constitutional right, because they do have the constitutional right, but the state shouldn't limit that. But at the same time, if we're going to gain any ground on this right now and we have the opportunity to pass it, I think it's important that we still say, all right, we opposed it, amended like you did, but we're going to support this going forward, knowing full well that next year we're going to be making the push to get that age back to 18 from 21. And I think that's where it needs to be. I think the message can't be lost in this, that we are in favor of some people getting rights, but we were originally in favor of them all getting that right.
Right. If we're saying the age of majority is 18, well then you have your rights at 18 as the age of majority.
And let me correct that, to exercise your rights, not that we're given the rights by the state. That the fact that they're recognizing that right by the state.
Right. Or hopefully to return, as Representative McCormick says, to return the rights to people, which is
right.
It's what it is. The state took them away, and now
that's right.
This law would start the process of returning them, because there's still restrictions. So the amendment not only it did a couple other things. So it took it from 18 to 21, but also the bill before, as it came out of the House, it applied to any individual. But now it was amended to Louisiana residents. So now only Louisiana, if it passes, only Louisiana residents would be able to conceal carry. And essentially only in those places you can open carry. So it's in Louisiana Revised Statute 4095, and then like 0.1 through point whatever. Those are the areas where it kind of lays out where you can't carry. So like schools, school zones, places like that, a restaurant or any place that serves alcohol, places like that. So you still won't be able to carry there, which is why you still need the permit. But they say, I don't really like this term, but it's sort of like a first step. And then hopefully we can keep, with the new governor, hopefully a conservative, strong governor, and good leadership in the legislature, because technically, if you look at our Constitution, the governor only has, on paper, he doesn't have a ton of authority. Where it comes in is his appointment. Like, our governor can appoint something like over 2,000 positions or something. So he has a lot of political power, but it's on paper, he doesn't have a lot of actual power. So there's nothing, it's each house of the legislature chooses their own leadership. Now, historically, the governor has a big say in that. And it wasn't until not this current legislature, but the one before with Representative Barra.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the first time in, I don't know how long, maybe ever, I can't remember, that the legislature actually told the governor, no, we're not going to go with your choice. This is our choice. And that's the way it should be. But hopefully, we get a better situation than we got this time around, where you had essentially all the Democrats and a handful of Republicans choose the Speaker of the House, which, when you owe your speakership to essentially the governor, because it's, you'd imagine it probably took the governor to lean on all the Democrats politically. And so essentially now you have a Republican speaker who's beholden to a Democrat governor,
Right.
It's not good. So we need better leadership in all all area, the legislature and the governor, if
Well,
we're going to have strong,
I think that
strong.
just having somebody, us being citizens of the state of Louisiana, if nothing else, all those appointees you just mentioned that the governor has the ability to put in place, at least if we can get somebody like Landry in there, we have the opportunity to replace all those people and still have that political pull from all those appointees because it'd be somebody else who's putting them in place. Now, does he have the stomach to go in there and make wholesale changes? Because, I mean, just thinking of a similar scenario, look at all the problems that Donald Trump had because he didn't make the necessary changes when he could have and should have when he went into the White House. So hopefully Landry, if he is elected, I know we're counting our chickens before they hatch a little bit, but hopefully he goes in there and makes the necessary changes as quickly as possible to get those holdouts out of there.
That's the problem with bureaucracy is bureaucracy is there to take care of itself. And so if you got a reformer in like President Trump or hopefully, or, if Attorney General Landry gets elected and he wants to come in and make changes, you're going to get pushback because you got people in the bureaucracy. They like the way the status quo and they don't want it to change, and they're going to push back.
That's right. And what about all this that I did for your office before? Those favors will be brought up.
Yep.
Well, I think this is a good thing long term. I know that GOA and of course yourself and myself will continue all that push to get that age changed. I think that if we got to call it a baby step at this point, we certainly still don't. I was mentioned before you came on. I still don't consider constitutional carry. I use the term because that's what everybody else is using.
Right. That's what the bill is. The title of the bill, but it's essentially a limited permitless carry is probably the most accurate term. But yeah. So I mean, the thing is, because one of what you hear from the opponents, it's essentially if this passed, all of a sudden you'd have a flood of guns on the street, and there'd be way more gun violence. But what's interesting is that in Representative McCormick pointed this out, and actually another attorney who testified today pointed it out too. It's essentially we've had open carry in Louisiana since it became a state, and this is no different than open carry. It's essentially I can take my shirt or my jacket and put it over my pistol, but essentially I can't bring it anywhere or carry it anywhere where I couldn't already do that. So why is it any different than open carry? And they just ignore that. It's just what it's going to do. It's all of a sudden all these people who apparently were okay with obeying the law before, all these law-abiding citizens or all these criminals who decided to obey this law, will now all of a sudden not be able to control themselves and just once we have constitutional carry and just go nuts, apparently.
Well, it's not like we don't have case studies from other states either. This isn't the first state to get a version of constitutional carry. All you have to do is look at the other states who have implemented similar laws, and you'll see that there has never been a spike in crime in any of these states who have implemented these types of laws, but they're too lazy to do that.
Well, and the problem is when you get into, so I think it's important that when we're having these discussions that we talk about, rights and, natural law in the sense of essentially all the terms used in the Declaration of Independence, because that is, it's true. These are our rights given to us by our Creator, and the purpose of good government is to protect and expand those rights. Because when you start, I guess, using the same arguments as the anti-gunner, so they start throwing statistics. But the problem is, for every statistic they have, we have a statistic that says the opposite. Right. And so you're not going to get anywhere because they have reports that say it increases domestic violence, and we have reports that say it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then you have a third group that says, well, it's inconclusive. And so that's the problem when you base your arguments and stuff like that. Anybody can use whatever facts they want and say they're true, but if you actually use, truth, as in said in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident. One of these self-evident truths is that we have the right to our life. And how do we do that? Well, we have the right to keep and bear arms, which defend our lives, the lives of our family, and our communities.
Right.
But they don't want to hear that either. They just ignore that. They just think all that natural rights mumbo jumbo.
Well, that's where they immediately bring up the hyperbole of how many children have to die before you're going to want common sense. That's where they'll inject that. That's usually once you've given them an argument that they can't argue back on, that's when they bring up the how many kids have to die talking point. So, which is stupid.
I mean, it's understandable. Look, I give them this. You know, a lot of these people, they've had tragedies in their lives, and so I understand why they feel that way. But you know, it's if you think about what you're, if you take, you know, if you take where they're arguing, you follow it all the way to the end, where it logically concludes. You know, it's essentially it's government authority over rights of individuals. And if you allow, so because it's if individuals can't be trusted with firearms because we can't train adequately enough, it's not required, and they talk about it because it's not required. It's forbidden to train, but it doesn't say it's forbidden to train. It's just not required. But they talk in the sense of, well, the only ones who can possibly ever train enough to be qualified would be military and police.
Right.
So if the military and the police are the only ones who can have firearms to protect themselves, but then now you're putting the authority of government over the rights of the people. And they never want to hear this argument either. But if now you're saying, okay, government is the only one that can protect me, here are all of our guns. Well, just look at all the various governments throughout history. The Russians, the Russian communists, and Pol Pot, and all the ones, all these dictators. When people give up their guns, I mean, that's the natural conclusion what we get to. It starts out good intentions that they've had loved ones or injuries themselves.
Yeah.
But if you give up your rights for perceived immediate safety, I mean, at some point down the road, we've seen it in history over and over again, bad things happen.
Yeah. Well, and in closing, I'll say that nobody else's, no matter how much I sympathize with them, no one else's horrible tragedy gives them any kind of leverage upon my rights at that point. So, I mean, I feel for them and my heart goes out to them. And I'm sure I would feel just as awful if the same things happened to me, but also with me standing on a street corner demanding to take innocent law-abiding Americans' rights from them because something bad happened to me or my family.
I agree.
Guys, we're going to get out of here. Just so you all know, we are going over to, I'm going to join John Crump and Flying Rich at John Crump Live in 13 minutes. So if you guys want to go over there, John Crump Live, we're going to be talking about some other things that happened. We've got a ruling that came out today, or I guess a refusal of a particular injunction that came out today regarding Gun Owners of America. So we'll be talking a little bit about that and some other things. More than likely, we'll cover this as well. Josh, always appreciate you coming on here and giving us some clarity on some of these issues, especially as odd and cloudy as Louisiana politics are. I think you at least bring us a certain sense of clarity to that and make some of the people understand a little bit better, not just Louisiana politics, but politics in general. So always grateful for you to spend your time with us.
I appreciate you having me on, Paul.
All right, Josh, we'll talk soon. And I know we've got a lot more to talk about. We'll probably have you on in the next, I'm sure we'll probably do 2 or 3 more live streams in the coming weeks as all this stuff kind of continues to unfold with the Louisiana constitutional carry.
We have 10 days left till 10 days total calendar days. I don't know if those are working days. We'll see if they'll work over the weekends. But so, yeah, I mean, my next step, I got to put on an alert, but I got to figure out what exactly to say. So it's kind of going to depend, I got to see, hopefully the rules are suspended and it doesn't go to the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Committee and it goes straight to the Senate floor. I think we'll know if something like that happens. I think we'll have a pretty clear indication that the governor is at least okay with the bill becoming law. So hopefully in the next, day, I hope to have it out by tomorrow as soon as possible. But hopefully the next day or so we'll have even a little more clarity of where things stand.
Well, we've got some Louisiana folks on here. So what I'll do is when you send that alert out, I'll grab the link and I'll put it in the description, the description of this particular live stream, but I'll also share that out there so that folks from Louisiana can go out there and take whatever action is required.
Well, if you go to gunowners.org, which is GOA's website, I think somewhere on like the right-hand side, there's a place to sign up for alerts. And what you do, you'll get all the national alerts and then state-specific. So not just, if it's Louisiana, you'd get Louisiana alerts. And so if anybody's interested in doing that, it's just a free sign up. You don't have to be a member. be on the list or to take action.
And you don't get slammed with garbage emails. It's actually literally alerts regarding that state.
Yeah, it's all it's yep, alerts, action alerts, stuff like that.
Well, thank you, Josh. Guys, we're going to get out of here. And don't forget, go join us over at John Crump Live, where John Crump and Flying Rich and myself will talk about some other gun issues that are out there right now. Thanks, folks.